week's podcast for episode number 40. But Revenge of the Sith, and this one's kind of a toss-up in terms of my favorite vehicle. I definitely know what my least favorite vehicle is. It's probably my least favorite vehicle of all the movies, and oddly enough, I can't find what the name of it is. But my favorite is the Jedi Starfighter from Revenge of the Sith. In Revenge of the Sith, the change from the Jedi Starfighter in Attack of the Clones, they split the wings, gave it more of a fork in the front, put a cockpit that had the window that looked like a TIE fighter, and then gave the wings that folded out like a TIE fighter. That ship, to me, is really cool. And a really unique, inventive way of getting us closer to the TIE fighters that we're used to seeing without taking us all the way there. It's kind of like we're halfway there. It's like, oh, okay, now I'm beginning to see the aesthetic of where the Empire comes in and everything turns gray and gets a little bit less fancy and sort of more utilitarian, I don't know if that word sounds like it works, right? Maybe not. So the Jedi Starfighter is definitely my favorite. Right up there with it, and I guess we'll make it the honorable mention, because there's a couple more vehicles in Revenge of the Sith that I want to talk about. But the Arc 170 Starfighter, which is one that I talked about a lot last week. That's the one that has the stub nose on it with the wings like an X-wing. That, again, to me, close second. We just don't see it quite as much. The Jedi Starfighter is used quite a bit in the film, several different scenes, whether it's in the beginning or Obi-Wan going to Utapau or Anakin using it to go to Mustafar. I mean, you see that vehicle a lot. We really only see the Arc 170 in the beginning and then during Order 66. I wish we had seen more of it. It's a really cool, unique take on what the X-Wing ended up becoming. We just didn't see that a whole heck of a lot. And then it didn't really show up in anything else, right? That'd be a nice bridge to see some movies taking place between Revenge of the Sith and A New Hope that maybe brought that fighter back. Actually, I wouldn't mind seeing one, sort of an old beat up one in Rogue One. I think that would be kind of really cool. Before I get to my least favorite, let me mention one other vehicle that I wish got more play, if you will, in the prequel trilogy, and that is the V-Wing Starfighter. You only saw the V-Wing at the very end after Obi-Wan and Anakin's lightsaber battle. You see the V-Wing along with Palpatine's transport ship, which looks really cool as well. Do you see him on Mustafar? I think you see him on Mustafar. No, I don't think you see him on Mustafar. I know you see the shuttle landing on Mustafar, but I don't think you see the V-Wing. The V-Wing kind of looks like a Jedi Starfighter, and then it has these sort of flat panels that they fold down and then they sit horizontal with the frame when it lands, and then when it takes off, they rotate up, and so it has kind of a head-on or rear profile of what you would see with a TIE fighter. But not really all that far off from the Sith Infiltrator without the ball. The V-Wing to me was a really cool looking ship. And it's one of those ones that if I ever see in a toy store again, if I've got the money, I might pick it up just because I really, really dig the design of that. And then you see it at the very, very end. That's right. At the very, very end of Revenge of the Sith, when you see the frame construction of the Death Star, and you see that the Star Destroyers or the Republic ships have now been all painted that gray color. They no longer have sort of any kind of white or red on them that we saw during the Clone Wars. You see a couple of those V-Wing starfighters buzzing around, and they've all been painted gray. I wish we had seen more of those in action in the films. All right, so least favorite of Revenge of the Sith. And I looked for it online before I did the podcast today, and for the life of me, I couldn't find it. There is a shuttle that's used twice in the movie. And Obi-Wan uses it once, and then Anakin uses it once, and then Obi-Wan uses it once. Anakin uses it once when he goes to stop Mace Windu from killing Palpatine, and then chops off Mace Windu's arm, and Palpatine becomes Darth Sidious. You see a moment where Anakin runs up, climbs up, and gets into it, and it's kind of hard to describe. If you took a pita bread and you cut it in half, and then the flat part that you cut becomes the rear, and then you stuck a dome on top, this dome window, you would, that's what it looks like. It's really kind of simple and dumb looking. The bubble canopy on it just is lame. And the other part about it that really drives me nuts, and maybe I'd like it more if the effects were better, but the moment when Anakin runs up and gets into it, the CGI work in that was really bad. And then you see him, he lands, you see him in the cockpit, and then I think you see the cockpit open, he jumps out. And then you see it again outside of Padme's terrace when Obi-Wan comes and talks to her about Anakin and how he needs to find Anakin, and that's when he finds out that she's pregnant. It just I don't like the look of the ship. I don't like how it's randomly thrown in, and I almost wish there had been like some type of explanation as to why are they using that particular ship. I've never seen it before. And it's really simple looking. And I'm not a big fan of the bubble canopies. That was one of the things, small sort of things that I didn't really care for in the Jedi Starfighter was the bubble canopy. But that ship to me, I don't know. It just rubs me wrong. It just looks dumb. And you know what? It's funny because there's a couple of Coruscant vehicles that I don't like. That one, and then the transport that they use in the Phantom Menace when they all arrive back on Coruscant. And Obi-Wan sends Anakin and Jar Jar on his way with Padme, and they get in that little shuttlecraft. It's got sort of 2 rows, and they buzz around. That scene drives me nuts because I don't see anybody put a seatbelt on. And there's a moment where it descends down to the top of a building at a really fast and steep angle, and I'm kind of sitting back going, how in the world are they not flying out of that thing? Right? You see that in movies, in like war movies. When people get into like a helicopter and they're just hanging out the side and nobody's strapped into anything, I'm like, how are they not falling out? Little tiny things like that bug me. But that ship to me was just kind of like, whatever. I like the speeders, like in Attack of the Clones, the speeders that Anakin uses and that Zam Wenzel used. I think those are cool. But there's those 2 particular ones I didn't really care for. Let me make one more comment. We're getting close to the end here, and I'll probably have to cut the podcast a little bit short just because I'm short on time to go see Star Wars. There is a moment, speaking of vehicles, and continuity errors in general. There's a moment in The Phantom Menace, and it's one of these moments where I go, how in the world did nobody bother to go and fix that? When Anakin is in the hangar towards the end of the film, and Obi-Wan looks at Anakin and says, or Anakin says, can I go with you? And Obi-Wan says, no, stay in that cockpit. Okay. No, stay in that cockpit. So Anakin goes up into the cockpit. Well, there's 2 different things here. Two different issues. And actually, there's a similar issue in The Force Awakens that I'll talk about in just a moment. They're very small things, but as fans, when you notice them, you go, that takes me out. It takes me out of the the feeling of this movie. Okay, so in The Phantom Menace, Anakin's in the cockpit, and Padme and the other Naboo army guys, right, end up getting in a firefight with with the droids, and a couple of the destroyer ball droids show up. And Anakin decides that he's going to help her out, and he starts flipping levers and pushing buttons inside the Naboo starfighter. And he hits the one lever that closes the canopy. When the canopy slides forward to open and then back to close. When it goes to, and I'm probably ruining it for people that never noticed before, so I apologize. But when it goes to close, it bounces and then doesn't connect. So it's a side shot, and you see the side of Anakin Skywalker's head, and you just whoop, and you see the canopy close. But when you see it close, it's like notched on his headrest. It hits it, and then it bounces off, and it doesn't slam shut all the way. And that drives me nuts because I'm like, well, the minute he gets into space, he's going to die if they don't go and close that. So that drives me nuts. 2, and see, this is probably why the Naboo Starfighter did not become my favorite vehicle, because I had a couple of issues with it that I just now figured out. The other thing is the placement of the R2 unit in the Naboo Starfighter. He wouldn't fit. There's no place for his arms to go. So unless an R2 unit's arms folded down or disconnected, when you look at the port that sits in the back of that Naboo Starfighter, there's no way that an R2 unit could go and fit there. So I don't understand that at all. And then the last thing, God, I hate to close on a negative. The last thing that drives me nuts is at the beginning of The Force Awakens, when they're battling on Jakku, and Poe Dameron goes to the X-Wing, and he goes to climb in, and BB-8 rolls underneath it. There's an arm that comes down like a suction cup, and it grabs onto the top of BB-8's dome and sucks him up into the X-Wing fighter. But then that dome is gone when he goes and he's like, it's gone. Like it sucks him up from the it comes down, grabs him, picks him up, and sucks him in. And then when he gets to the top, the arm's gone. I don't understand how that would have. Pablo Hidalgo needs to go and answer these questions for me. Maybe I should hit him up on Twitter. All right, so I got to wrap this up, and actually I'm out of time anyhow. So, hey, I got through. That's cool. I ended up getting through the prequel trilogy. So we'll work through some of the. We'll work through some of the vehicles from the original trilogy next week, along with any other topics. And maybe next week we'll be talking about a Rogue One trailer. Who knows? I'll certainly give you my take on seeing The Force Awakens for the 9th or 10th time, right? All right, if you want to drop me an email, I got it right this time. talkshownerd@gmail.com. talkshownerd@gmail.com. Thank you so much for checking out episode number 39 of the My Nerd World podcast. Be sure to subscribe on iTunes. Have yourself a fantastic week. And until we talk next week, may the Force be with you always.